Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Alexandra McRobert, and I am a Canadian who grew up in Toronto. And I actually lived in Kingston for 5 years when I attended Queen's University. And I now live in Abu Dhabi, which is all the way in the Middle East, about a 14-hour flight from Toronto. And I am the founder of the Mindful Life Practice and Sober Curious Yoga. So the Mindful Life Practice is a global virtual yoga community, and we operate on Zoom, and we have participants and yoga teachers from all over the world. And we offer yoga, Pilates, barre, and meditation classes. Now, within the Mindful Life Practice, I run a big program called Sober Curious Yoga School. And I help adults who have problems with issues with drinking alcohol quit drinking and develop a daily yoga practice to transform their lives and live happier and healthier. I also train yoga teachers. I run 200-hour yoga teacher trainings, and I run a podcast called Sober Yoga Girl. So when I was deciding how to present my life story to you, I thought the best way to present it would be in a map so that you could see kind of my journey all around the world. And we're going to start off talking about my time at Queen's. So I grew up in Toronto, and I came to Kingston to Queen's University, concurrent education, when I was 18. And as a teenager, I got into partying at a really young age. I did it to be cool, to be accepted, to cope with my mental health. And I got to Queen's, and I was really, really struggling. I got into partying. I was really depressed and anxious, and I just lacked seeing this correlation between how much alcohol I was consuming and how it was impacting my mood. I found it really, really difficult to open up and approach Queen's counseling. You know, I thought only weak people went for counseling support. I thought it was shameful to admit that I was struggling with my mental health. And it was a really long struggle. I finally started crying out for help. I finally started speaking to counselors, and I didn't get a proper diagnosis or treatment for my mood disorder. And I continued to manage my mental health by drinking alcohol. Alcohol actually makes mental health worse than it makes it better. So there's this famous author in the alcohol-free world. She says that drinking alcohol is like pouring gasoline on your anxiety. And I think that's true. You know, for myself, so much of my adult life was associated with drinking alcohol that I couldn't imagine a life without it. And I also didn't realize that what I was drinking was directly correlated to my mental health. So during this time, I finally went to see a counselor, and she recommended that I try yoga. And I had tried it before, but I had never quite found the right fit for me. And this time I tried it, and it stuck. And so I did a 30-day yoga challenge at a studio called Samatva Yoga in downtown Kingston. And here's a picture of me there. And I knew very early on that this was the path in life that I wanted to take. This is my destiny. I immediately was really connected to the practice. It helped and it healed me so much. But my parents wanted me to kind of get a real job. They wanted me to become a teacher. And I loved teaching at schools, but it just didn't feel like it was the right fit for me. And so I saved up all my money. I got a scholarship. I traveled to Mexico for yoga teacher training. And when I returned, I got back to Canada, and I naturally stepped into all forms of teaching yoga, even the styles that I wasn't trained for. Now, I was not that interested in being a traditional school teacher at all. I told my parents I wanted to do yoga full time. They were insistent that I go into school teaching. And so around this time, I was actually finishing my degree at Queen's, and I did a student teacher placement, and it was at Frontenac Public School, which you can see in these pictures. And I know Frontenac Public School does not exist anymore. It's been torn down. But back when I was there, 8 years ago, it still existed. And I had this amazing mentor as a teacher, and his name was Simon. And he had taught abroad for 2 years in Egypt. And he said to me, I was really stressed out about everything. I'm like, I'm not making enough money teaching yoga. I don't really think I want to teach full time. I don't really know what to do with my life. And he said to me, just go teach abroad. You're never going to regret it. And if you want to leave, you can always quit, but you'll never know if you don't try. And so upon his inspiration and encouragement, I started to look into it. And I had always really wanted to go to South America. I had done very little traveling as a young person in my life up until that point. I had only really been to the Caribbean. I wanted to go live in a location where I could be near the beach, and the pay and the packages in the Caribbean and South America weren't awesome. So I ended up paying for this upgrade on the teaching recruitment website. And what it could do was I could just like send a notification of interest to schools all over the world. So I just kind of started tapping all these schools, poking them. And I ended up hearing from schools in countries all over, Bangladesh, Suriname, Marshall Islands. And I ended up having interviews on Skype. And through these interviews, I met people from all over the world, learning about countries that I had never heard of before. Started to learn about cultural norms, about religions, which countries were landlocked. It was just amazing. And, I myself was never that interested in traditional geography lessons. Learning from a textbook was not that interesting for me, but this was so fascinating because it was real. It was purposeful learning around the globe. And so during this time, I got scouted by a principal in Kuwait, and I had no idea where Kuwait was. I had never even heard of this country before when I did the interview. And I had no idea that it was in between Saudi Arabia and Iraq, that it was conservative, that it was small, that alcohol was illegal. I literally just hopped on the interview. And the principal ended up being from Toronto, Canada, and we really connected. And I just had this gut intuition, this is the right place for me. So I signed this job to Kuwait. And when I told all my family and friends that I was moving to Kuwait, they looked at me like I was completely crazy, mostly because it's so conservative. And there's so many terrible stereotypes in the media about what the Middle East is like, right? People think that it's violent. People think it's dangerous. People think it's unsafe for women. And also everyone knew that in Kuwait, alcohol was illegal. And, I had this party girl reputation. So people thought that I wouldn't survive. But I had this gut feeling that I trusted and that this was the right decision for me. And so I moved to Kuwait a few months later. And when I look back, I'm honestly like kind of shocked that I did this as a 23-year-old. I had never even been to Asia before, let alone the Middle East. And so there are these phases of culture shock that you go through. And the first is the honeymoon phase, where you just think everything is beautiful and magical and incredible. And that's kind of happened when I first began. So I want to show you some pictures. This is a picture of Mabula, which is the neighborhood I lived in Kuwait. This was the buildings. This is kind of me with a camel. That's a big thing here, like camel riding in the desert. So me and my friend were off riding a camel. This is me at a marina in Dubai. Sorry, not Dubai, in Kuwait. This is on National Day. So on National Day, you dress up in the local cultural clothes. So this is called a dastasha, and Kuwaiti men wear this. Kuwaiti children, not as much sometimes, but this was just a special dress up day outfit. And then this is a picture of me with a sign that says Free Kuwait. I think it's like a kind of a relic from the past. I'm not entirely sure the context on that, but it was in a market and I decided to take a picture. So I want to just show you some more pictures. So this is me wearing abaya and hijab when I'm visiting a mosque. Now I want to tell you that women do not have to cover their hair in public, only when you're at a mosque, and that's because it's a religious place. So whenever I was touring a mosque, I had to cover my hair. Other than that, I could sort of cover my elbows, cover my shoulders, cover my knees to be respectful. This is my first apartment. I just want to share with you, if you're someone who's interested in a teaching career, really amazing thing about teaching abroad is that generally at the schools, they will give you a free apartment. And so it's a really amazing way. Like for me, I had no money when I left school. I actually had to borrow like a little bit of money from my parents for my first month in Kuwait to survive. And had I not gotten this job abroad, I never would have been able to travel the way I was. So I highly recommend sort of looking out at international teaching if it's something that you're interested in. This is the Kuwait Towers, which is the one big tourist site in Kuwait. And it would kind of be the equivalent of like the CN Tower in Toronto. As you can see in the photo, it's much smaller than the CN Tower. Here is just a little sign about Kuwait. And then these are some pictures of my neighborhood. I just want to point out here, this is the mosque. And something that is very different from Canada is that in Kuwait, they do the call to prayer over loudspeakers. And the first call to prayer would happen at like 3 or 4 in the morning, and then it would happen 5 times a day. Now in Canada, there are, noise legislative laws that you can't, play music out loud because it will wake people up. And I had to kind of understand when I moved to Kuwait that the cultural norms were just different. And, I was living in a country that was not my own. So I kind of had to be open and accepting of these cultural differences. So I want to give you an example of I went through the honeymoon period of culture shock where everything was amazing, everything was beautiful. And then I kind of hit this wall of like the frustration phase of culture shock. And this is when things sort of start to upset you or bother you. And I want to give you an example. It's pretty common over here for children to be playing in the playground or out at night, really late at night. When I first got here, I was really judging the parenting. I was like, why are you not enforcing a bedtime? And it took me honestly years for me to understand that that's for a few reasons, right? The climate is really hot. And so it makes more sense for kids to play later at night and then wake up in the morning and then have a little nap and then have lunchtime later in the day. And that's just a different way of doing things in Canada, right? My way is not necessarily right. It's just different. And that has been one of my biggest takeaways from my time here, right? When I was in Canada, I had this very narrow viewpoint of what was right or wrong based on my culture and the way that my family did things. And when coming abroad, I had to learn how to step into other perspectives and see that everyone does everything differently. And there's not necessarily a right or wrong way. There's just a different way, right? So I spent my 2 years in Kuwait. It was extremely, extremely tough for me. It's a tiny country. It is smaller than the city of Toronto. And both its borders are countries that I couldn't travel to, right? I couldn't travel to Iraq. I couldn't travel to Saudi Arabia. And also alcohol was illegal. And, I was struggling with my drinking at this point. And so I became really obsessed with traveling, right? Leaving the country, going to nearby countries where I could drink and partying. And in this time, I got to see these countries I had never thought I could see in this lifetime. So I just want to show you guys some pictures. All right, so these are all from my first year in Kuwait, which is unbelievable. I was this kid who I used to visit the Royal Ontario Museum as a kid, and I would look at the pyramids of Egypt and think like, wow, I'm never going to see those in my lifetime. And then to be able to finally go there, it honestly just shows like, never limit yourself to thinking like, I'll never do this, or I'll never see that, or that's too far for me, or that will be too much money, because it ended up all kind of being possible, which is amazing. And so these are the places that I visited. I went to Spain. This is me at the Taj Mahal in India. This is the Burj Al Arab, which is in Dubai. This is me at the Grand Mosque in Abu Dhabi, which is where I later moved. This is the Treasury in Petra in Jordan. This is the Pyramids of Egypt. And then this is a fort in Bahrain. So this is all in my first year abroad. And during this time, I actually got an opportunity to teach yoga full-time at a studio in Kuwait. And I almost took the job. I actually even signed the contract. And then in the end, I got too scared of the risk. I backed out. My parents weren't loving this idea. They wanted me to stay in teaching. And I backed out of it. And then in the end, my life was kind of falling apart. My drinking was out of control. My mental health was in its worst space. I just felt so unfulfilled in my career as a teacher, and I spiraled so much that I ended up having to take sick leave, come home, and receive treatment for my mood disorder. And during this time, it was recommended that I don't drink alcohol at all anymore, which I ignored. But I did get back into yoga. I received proper medical care, and all in all, I was doing a lot better. And so once I recovered, there was one thing I wanted to do, which was go back to the Middle East. I had totally fallen in love with this continent, more so than my home in Canada. And so I ended up kind of opening up to apply for jobs again, got an opportunity to teach at an elementary school in Abu Dhabi, which is the capital city of the United Arab Emirates. And so I'm just going to flip over and show you guys that. So I moved to the United Arab Emirates, which is just below Kuwait. And the United Arab Emirates is a bit more global. It's a bit more modern. It's a bit more open-minded. There are, in every 10 people, 9 out of the people out of 10 are expats. So it is more liberal than Kuwait, and it just felt like a better fit for me within the Middle East. And we are very famous for the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque, which you might have seen on pictures. This is the Louvre Abu Dhabi, which is the original Louvre is in Paris in France, but we have built our own in Abu Dhabi. And then here's the Abu Dhabi city skyline. And now these pictures are all from National Day in Abu Dhabi. So we don't normally dress like this, but I just thought that it would be really cool. This is at my school. I thought it would illustrate, the way we celebrate here. And so this is actually pretty cool. We have like a camel and a falcon on campus for National Day. And then this is me and my uncle when my uncle came out to visit me, which was amazing. And then this is a picture of me at the Grand Mosque, which is, this building. And so the UAE was just a better country for me because there's just like a bit more going on. We actually have a concert venue where we even had Sam Smith, we had Dua Lipa visit, we had Guns N' Roses, and I just have felt so at home and so happy in Abu Dhabi. But I was still feeling really unfulfilled in my work life. And there were more opportunities to party, and I just continued back to that same downward spiral that I was at, 2 years before. And it hit this point where I was so depressed, and I started to realize, I have a great life. I have a great job. I do yoga. I eat healthy. I work out. Why am I still so unhappy? And it began to dawn on me, it must be the alcohol. And I didn't want to quit. I was afraid of quitting. I just didn't know what my life would be like without it. It was April 2019 when I finally decided enough was enough. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I ended up deciding to take a 28-day break from alcohol. And I joined an online program to quit drinking called 1 Year No Beer. And that was a powerful time for me because all this time I thought there was something wrong with me, right? I couldn't stop drinking alcohol. There's something wrong with me. There's something flawed within me if I'm struggling with my alcohol consumption. But there were 20,000 people in this Facebook group. And I began to realize that a lot of people out there actually struggled with this because alcohol is an addictive drug, right? It's like anything. If you smoke too many cigarettes, you're going to get addicted. If you drink too much coffee, you're going to get addicted, right? And if you drink too much alcohol, you're going to get addicted to that too. And there's so many people out there that struggle with their alcohol, just like me. And none of us ever set out one day to have a problem with drinking. We never said, I'm going to start drinking and then I plan to get addicted to this, right? It just happened. We started partying as young adults, and then our drinking just got worse and worse. And then some of us got addicted, and then we got stuck. And joining this online community made me realize that there was nothing wrong with me. The problem is the normalization of alcohol in the world and the lack of education and awareness about its harm. So during the time that I was quitting alcohol, I went through a really tough withdrawal period. And I want to point out that I was a very high functioning person. Okay. I held down a job. I was highly productive. I was even recognized by my school as being one of the outstanding teachers at the time, right? So my drinking never interfered with my ability to do my job. And I think this is important because we have a stereotype in our head that alcoholics just get up in the morning and get drunk at 9 in the morning. And that was not the case for me. And that's not the case for a lot of people I work with, right? And so once I got through this withdrawal, I began to realize, I can never go through that again. I never want to go through that again. And that was enough to motivate me to stay sober. So when I was quitting drinking, I realized that people who have problems with drinking or any other substance generally do it because they're using it as a way to cope with what's happening in their lives. It's more of a symptom of a greater problem, right? And for myself, it was numbing me from the truth, which was that all along, teaching was not my career path, right? I was meant to be a yoga teacher. And then once I quit drinking, I started to wake up to this. Once I stopped drinking, I realized that drinking was low self-worth behavior. When I was drinking beer and wine every night, when I was partying on the weekend, I was keeping myself in this low self-worth, which is one of my podcast guests was talking about this. By drinking, I was holding myself back. I was limiting my potential. And as soon as I quit drinking, I realized, I'm worthy of following my dreams. I'm worthy of making this career, doing what I love, right? I am capable. I can do it. And I started to put all my time, all my energy, all my money into growing my business. I did further trainings as a spin instructor, a bar instructor, and a life coach, and I built my business. And so when COVID-19 pandemic started, I began teaching my yoga classes in a new form on Zoom, and my community grew quickly. We now have 1,600 participants in the past year join us for classes at some point in over 13 months. We've had 25 instructors teach for us. We've had over 1,000 classes recorded on demand for our archives. And so meanwhile, I'm running the Mindful Life practice, and I started doing one-on-one life coaching. And I was a general life coach. And so what life coaching is all about is it's about goal setting, right? So counseling leans into the past, consulting is giving advice, and coaching gets you where you want to be further and faster than you would on your own. So my coaching was not growing at the rate I wanted to. It was building really slowly. A handful of people hired me to coach them. And at this point, I was around a year alcohol free, and I had started posting on Instagram about it. And people were reaching out to me for advice to stop drinking. And so I coached someone through 90 days sober. And at the end of the coaching period, he wrote me a letter saying, "Thank you for saving my life." And that was when I realized, I was meant to be a sober coach. And so as soon as I identified as a sober coach and I called myself Sober Yoga Girl, this is when this ball really got rolling. And things have massively evolved over time, right? Initially, I was working one-on-one with people. Then I developed a yoga challenge called Sober Girls Yoga, and it's evolved and changed to what's now called Sober Curious Yoga School. And this is an 8-week program to quit alcohol and develop a daily yoga practice. And the goal of this is to create a life that you don't need alcohol to escape from. And so we holistically look at every person's aspect of their life, from their wealth to their health, to their creativity, to their joy, to their work. And we systematically work on and improve everything bit by bit until you figure out why you're drinking so much and how you can create a life where you don't need alcohol anymore. Now, my newest projects are I certify yoga teachers in 200-hour yoga teacher trainings on Zoom. And here's one of my students down in the Cayman Islands. And I also do live events in Abu Dhabi. So we've been very fortunate to not be on lockdown. And so this is me doing a cruise the other week. It was a yoga cruise. And then this is me teaching a live yoga class. And here I am on the beach. And this is just one of the screenshots of my podcast. My podcast is called Sober Yoga Girl, and I interview inspirational people on their journeys quitting alcohol. And I've met some of the most inspiring people, right? Music DJs, producers, famous thought leaders in the sober world, and even TikTok stars. So I've officially opened a business in Abu Dhabi, and I intend to stay here long-term, taking international transformational retreats and yoga teacher trainings overseas whenever the borders open. And I have so much joy finally, after all these years, following my dreams and finally doing what I love. So when creating this presentation, I thought, what are the key messages? What are the life lessons that I want to leave you guys with? What do I want to share? And so I summed it up into 5 things that I want to share with you. Okay. The first is that life does not make sense while it's happening, but it's going to make sense when you look back, right? You're going to encounter times in your life when you're lost, when you don't know what you're doing next, right? When I quit my job in Kuwait and had to go home for mental health care, I honestly felt like that was it. My life was over. And when you look back on your life, in actuality, every step along the way is going to make sense in retrospect. Okay, the second thing I want to say is you need to take risks, try new things, and be open-minded. Many people, when I said I was moving to the Middle East, brought up negative stereotypes, right? They said it was war-torn. They said women were mistreated. They said air conditioning wouldn't exist. And I have fallen in love with this continent. It has become my home. It's opened my heart and mind. I don't want to leave. So don't believe everything you read on the media and stereotypes about different parts of the world. And life is an adventure. So just be open to it. The third thing I want to share with you is that you need to make decisions based on what's right for you, not what society tells you, okay? Ultimately, you are the one who's going to live with your decisions, right? I don't regret becoming a teacher because it opened the whole world for me. However, I had an inner knowing all along that yoga was my career. And I ignored this inner knowing and I followed a career that was more traditional because I wanted to fit into society's expectations or please my parents. And as soon as I got courageous to ignore this and follow my soul, that is when I became truly happy. Okay, the fourth thing I want to share with you is that alcohol is as addictive as a drug as all the rest. And I wish I was more mindful and aware of this when I started partying. So when I was growing up, I saw my granddad struggle with addiction to cigarettes, and he had 2 packs of cigarettes a day, and he eventually died of lung cancer. And my parents taught me, cigarettes are an addictive drug. These are going to impact your health. We calculated how much money he spent on cigarettes in his lifetime, and it was like enough to buy a house. And I wish that I was taught about alcohol in the same way that I was taught about cigarettes, because, you know, I still had moments where I took a little puff of a cigarette at a party, but I never wanted to smoke them too much because I was afraid of getting addicted. And I didn't understand that I could get addicted to alcohol in the same way, right? And I got addicted to it, and it took my time, it took my money, it took my energy, and it really challenged my mental health for 12 years. And all the chaos, all the drama, all the negativity from my life as a teenager was from alcohol, right? And when I removed alcohol from my life, I was 1,000 times happier. And so I wish I could go back in time to when I was a teenager and just kind of tell myself about the downward spiral that alcohol would take me on. And I think more awareness needs to be raised about the dangers of drinking. That said, fifth thing is that it is okay to have failures. It's okay to have mistakes. It's okay to have mess ups, right? Becoming addicted to drinking was the biggest mistake of my life in my mind. And one of my podcast guests, Andy Ramage, he said that your mess is your message. And I truly believe that is to be true, right? My greatest mess, my greatest mistake was my partying years. But if it didn't happen, then through Sober Curious Yoga would never even exist, right? The Mindful Life practice would never exist. So my greatest mess is my greatest message. And now I've made it my mission in life to support other people who are quitting drinking too. So I want you to know that it is okay to fall. And I say in yoga a lot, if you fall, you're still a good person. Life is not about who you are in the past and what mistakes you made. It is who you are now that matters. So thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate the invitation to talk today, and I look forward to hearing your questions.